In today's story, Mary had to go on a long journey to Bethlehem. We are going to send marbles on a journey through some mazes. So, what are some ways that we can make this marble roll? Yeah, I could push it. Yep, I could. I could push it and make it roll. I could use a force from my finger. What are some ways I could make it roll without touching it? Yeah, I could. I could lift up the table. That would be pretty hard to lift up the table and make it go through a maze and do what I want it to. But some of you may have noticed that I do have a straw. And so what we'll do today is you need your own paper straw, never plastic. You want a paper straw. And you want to blow on this marble to get it to go through the maze. Now you know that it's rolling, and so you've got to stop it when you get to the end. And I have a couple of mazes set up here. You can use anything you have at home to create your maze. So you can use like spaghetti noodles, pipe cleaners. You can roll snakes with Play-Doh and put them down into your maze. But you need something at the end to stop it. So you see with the pipe cleaners, we put one at the end so that it kind of gets caught at the end. And here with my Play-Doh, I think that I'll just put a little barrier right here at the end, like a little wall at the end of my maze. Okay, so now the tricky part. How do we get this to go through the maze? Okay. So then you can experiment with other things. The other variables. Things like different sizes are different masses. So what would it be like if I used this marble instead of the small one? Do you think that I will have to blow harder on this marble? So maybe. It would make sense if that were right? Way harder. I had to blow a lot more to get that one moving. And I had to keep blowing on it to keep it moving. So those are the things you want to test. You could also try a bouncing ball. And you can try changing the shape of your maze. So then you might make the curves go this way. And what happens if I have lots of curves? And what happens if I make my curves more narrow? So will the marble still move through it? So these are all variables that you can try at home also.
Claire, can I try this too?
Yes.
I wonder what it'd be like if I did a golf ball. It doesn't move too well just with me. Maybe if I have a sibling, a brother or a sister, maybe we could work together to move something this big. So I can't do that on my own. Let me try the smaller one. Oh, that seems to work better. Oh, I went off the track. Have to start over. And I wonder, maybe if we even made it a little competition and I had a sibling who was blowing his or her ball as I was blowing mine.
So here's one more challenge. Those two mazes had boundaries. We used the Play-Doh or we used the pipe cleaners to try to keep the marble on course. But if you have a sibling or a parent working with you and they have their own straw at the same time, you can try something even harder. You can draw a maze anywhere that you can. On the floor, on a big poster, on the sidewalk. You can draw a maze and you and your sibling can work together to keep the marble in the maze. Right there. If someone had been working with me, they could have been over here pushing the marble back on course. So if you have a sibling or a parent who can work with you, try this extra challenge of working together to keep the marble on course. So how does all of this work? What's the science of the marble and pushing it with the air? So you may have noticed one of Newton's laws, that nothing starts moving without a force. and nothing really stops moving without a force acting on it. So once it's moving, it's going to continue moving until another force stops the motion. Now sometimes things like a soccer ball on a field will roll and then stop in the middle of the field, and it looks like nothing was the force that was acting on the soccer ball. But really there was a force called friction between the soccer ball and the grass underneath it. And the friction was working against the motion of the soccer ball and caused it to stop. With a very smooth marble and a very smooth tabletop, there's not that much friction. So the marble will roll easily, and it kind of continues to roll even where you don't want it to, which is where the opposite force comes in. You need the opposite force pushing it back onto the course, because with so little friction, the marble's just going to keep rolling. So there are a couple of variables for you to test here. First, what would happen, and would it be easier to keep the marble on course if you chose a surface with more friction? Could you keep it on course if you drew a course out on your sidewalk where there's more friction, or in the grass where there's a lot more friction? The other thing that we tested, the other variable, was the size, the mass. And so we tried them, and you saw Dr. Sessions say she couldn't do this by herself because it was going to take just too much force. And so another piece of this is the mass. It takes more force to move a larger mass than to move a smaller mass. So more force for more mass. And then the other variable is the friction between the ball that you choose and the surface. So go test those things out. Mary's journey to Bethlehem was not easy, but it did bring peace to God's people. Sometimes being peacemakers can feel as difficult as moving a marble through a maze, but God gives us shoes of peace to help us bring peace to the hard situations in our lives.